So what we're going to do today during the help session is we are going to work out the classwork problems. So if you did not work out the classwork problems, you need to pause the video right here and work out these problems before you go any further, because this is going to help you on your quiz. Okay, so our first one is negative 3x minus 1 plus 9x minus 2 minus 4x plus 8. Now, what I do, and this kind of goes to the question that you were asking, what I do is I ask myself, can anything inside the parentheses be simplified? Inside parentheses, be simplified. Okay, so I would look at each individual one. I would look at 4x plus 8, 9x minus 2, and negative 3x minus 1. So can anything inside the parentheses be simplified? Okay, like any like terms. So what I'm looking for there is like negative 3x plus 1x. Okay, so like terms. And we don't have any like terms inside these parentheses. And so the next thing we look at, and we ask ourselves, does anything need to be distributed? Okay, is there anything outside the parentheses that needs to be distributed? And do we have something that needs to be distributed? The negative, yes. So that negative has to be distributed to both parts of that binomial. So I am actually going to rewrite my first binomial because nothing in there needs to be distributed. So I can just write it as minus 3x minus 1. The next binomial has nothing that needs to be distributed, so I write that as 9x minus 2. My next binomial needs the subtraction sign to be distributed. So that negative belongs to the 4x and it belongs to the 8. Okay? So that's how I get minus 4x minus 8. Now, the next thing that I do is combine like terms. I'm going to combine like terms, and a like term has same variable raised to the same exponent. Same variable raised to the same exponent. And we don't have any exponents here. We don't have any exponents here, so we're good. So I've got negative 3x, positive 9x, and negative 4x. Negative 3x and positive 9x would give me positive 6x, positive 6x, and minus 4x, 2x. Excellent, good job. Okay, and now I have negative 1, negative 2, and negative 8. What does that give me? You got it. So I think probably your confusion there was just how do I get rid of my parentheses, and I've got to distribute my negative. And so those two, the top two things, like can anything inside the parentheses be simplified, and is there anything that needs to be distributed? When you've addressed both of those, then you drop the parentheses when you're doing addition and subtraction.
So like if a number was in front of that one, like for example negative 2, and do I have to distribute negative 2 to the 4x and then positive?
Yes. Yes. So if you had a net, you would have to distribute the negative and the 2.
Okay.
Excellent. Good, good, good. Okay. Now our next one, we're going to be dealing with our exponent rules. So this one is minus 6xy squared times 8x to the third y squared. Now, the questions that you ask yourself here, you're looking for an exponent outside the parentheses. So you're asking yourself, is there an exponent outside the parentheses? Okay? And there's not in this situation. Sometimes there is, but in this situation, there's not. So since there is not an exponent outside the parentheses that I've got to deal with, then I deal with my numbers. So I'm going to multiply my numbers together. Then I'm going to deal with my x's, and then I'm going to deal with my y's. Okay? So let's start with my numbers. So I've got negative 6 times positive 8. What's negative 6 times positive 8? You got it. So negative 48. Now, the next thing that I'm going to deal with are my x's. I have x to the first, okay? And I know that first isn't written, but we've got to remember that's x to the first times x to the third. So what's x to the first times x to the third? It is x to the fourth. So let's think about why. So I have x times x to the third, okay? And when they are multiplied like that, that is when I add my exponents. So it's x to the fourth. But when we think about what x means, that just means x. What does x to the third mean? Good. It's x times x times x. It's multiplied times itself 3 times. So that's what that means. Okay, now our next one is y squared times y squared. So what does that give us? Y to the fourth. Is that good? You good with that one? Can I go to the next one? Okay. So our next one says negative 3 x to the second, y to the fourth. And all of that is raised to the third power. So do you remember over here when I said, is there an exponent outside the parenthesis that needs to be dealt with? Okay, this is what I'm talking about. We've got to deal with this 3 right here. Okay, that 3 belongs to everything inside the parentheses. So I am going to have the negative 3 raised to the third power. Then my x squared is being raised to the third power. So I actually have x squared to the third power. Do you know what we do with these two right here? We multiply them. Excellent. Okay, and then the last one that I have is y to the fourth raised to the third power. Now, a lot of students do not write that step down, and that's fine. You certainly don't have to, but I like to show you exactly what's going on. So negative 3 to the third power means negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Excellent, negative 27. Okay, and then I have x to the, it's x, 6, good, because it's 2 times 3, and then I have y to the, good, because it's 4 times 3. So a power to a power is when we multiply. So this is my final answer right here. Okay, was that number 3? Okay. Is it okay if I go to the next one? Perfect. Okay. So now I have 5x minus 7 and 4x plus 9. 5x minus 7 and 4x plus 9. So what I'm going to do here, so that the directions to this are simplifying. So what I'm going to do is I am going to FOIL. Okay, so I'm going to do first, outer, inner, last. So first is that I take 5x times 4x. So 5x times 4x. Those are my first terms. My outer terms are 5x times 9. Okay. Then I have my inner term is negative 7 times 4x. Whoops, I'm going to put plus negative 7 times 4x. And then my last are negative 7 times positive 9. Okay? So sometimes students don't write that step down, and that's fine. So now when we simplify, we get 20x squared plus 45x minus 28x minus 63. And it happens often, not every single time, but very often we're able to combine those middle terms. So you always want to ask yourself, do I have like terms? Are there any like terms that can be combined? So you always want to ask yourself that. So I've got 20x squared plus 17x minus 63. Okay, we good with that one? Okay, can I go to the next slide? Okay. So this one is very, very similar. This is 3n minus 2 times 2n minus 3. We are going to FOIL this. Okay, so I've got 3n times 2n. Okay, so that deals with my first. Then I have 3n times negative 3. Okay, that deals with my outer. Then I have negative 2 for my inner times 2n. So that's my inner terms. And then my last are negative 2 and negative 3. So those are my last. Okay, and I know that students don't always write this step down, but it's helpful if you're confused at all to see that step. So now I'm going to simplify. 3 times 2 is 6. N times n is n squared. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, and then I have an n. Negative 2 times 2 is, excuse me, it's minus 4, and then I've got this n, so I've got negative 4n. Then I have negative 2 minus 6. I'm sorry, negative 2 times negative 3, that's plus 6. Okay? So now I have 6n squared minus 13n plus 6. Okay, now our next one, we are squaring. We've got x minus 4y squared. Now, the wrong way to do this, and it happens all the time, I see it all the time, students will say x squared minus 16y squared. They want to do that all the time. They want to square the x, they want to square this, and then they want to be done. But that is incorrect. What x minus 4y means is it means x minus 4y times x minus 4y. That's what that means. And when we've got this, we have to do FOIL. So we're going to be doing FOIL again. We're going to have all sorts of great FOIL practice. So I've got x times x. Those are my first. Then I have x times negative 4y. So x times negative 4y. And it's a little weird because we've got that y. And so that's a little different for us. So we want to practice that. Then for my inner terms, I have negative 4y times x. Okay, and my last, I've got negative 4y times negative 4y. Okay, so we're going to simplify. X times x is x squared. Negative 4y times x, that's going to give me minus 4xy. Okay, then I have negative 4y times x, that's going to give me minus 4xy again. And then I have positive 16y squared. Always get in the habit of checking those middle terms, see if they can be combined. These can be combined. So I have x squared minus 8xy plus 16y squared. Okay, so lots of foiling. Students typically do okay with foiling. That's not usually something that they get too confused about. Now, the next one that we're going to do is a binomial times a trinomial. A binomial times a trinomial. So what we have to do here is we have to take this x, and we've got to multiply it times each term, okay? So I'm going to take my x, and I am going to multiply it times 2x squared. That's the first thing. Then I'm taking my x, and I am multiplying it times negative x. Then I take my x, and I multiply it times negative 5. So what I have done is I have taken this x, and I have given it, I have distributed it to everything in that trinomial. That's what I've done. Now, I am going to do the same exact thing, but with the 6. Okay? So I am going to say 6 times 2x. Then I'm going to say 6. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. 2x squared. Thank you. I would have kept going. Okay? Then I've got 6 times negative x. Okay? Then I've got 6 times negative 5. Okay? So what I did with my green is I took this 6 and I distributed it to everything in this trinomial. Okay? Now I can simplify. X times 2x squared is going to be 2x to the third. X times negative x is going to be minus x squared. Whoops, I got a 2 in there. It's just minus x squared. Then I have x times negative 5, so that's going to be minus 5x. 6 times 2x squared is going to be 12x squared. 6 times negative x is going to be minus 6x. 6 times negative 5 is going to be negative 30. And now it's super important that we look for like terms here because I've got 6 different monomials that I'm adding and subtracting. So 2x to the third, I don't have anything raised to this third power. So I'm good. I can just go ahead and mark that one out and write 2x to the third. Now, traditionally, you see this written in order, of descending order. So I've got x to the third. So traditionally, I'm going to have something x squared next. So negative x squared and positive 12x squared gives me 11x squared. Okay? And I like to mark these out, especially when I'm dealing with lots and lots of terms. Okay, so the next one, I've got negative 5x and negative 30. Oh, I'm sorry, not negative 30. I got ahead of myself. Negative 5x and negative 6x. That's going to give me negative 11x. Then I'm left with my minus 30. And it's not overly difficult to do a binomial times a trinomial. It's just that it takes some time. and sometimes we make mistakes with our computations. Okay, can I go to the next screen? Okay, now after that big one, this one's a little calmer. It's not quite as stressful. Sometimes you'll have division problems that'll be inside parentheses and they'll have an exponent on the outside. So that's something to remember, that you will have to deal with the exponent on the outside if there's one on the outside. This problem does not have that, so we're in pretty good shape. What we're going to do first is we are going to do some division right here. Now, many of you may be able to go ahead and look at that and identify that negative 70 divided by 5 is negative 14, but some of us aren't. So we can put the 70 inside the parentheses and put a 5 on the outside. Okay, 5 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. And then I'm left, after I subtract, I'm left with 20. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. I subtract and I'm left with 0. Now, because I've got negative 70 divided by positive 5, my answer here is negative. So that's why it's a negative 14. Okay? Then I have x to the 4th over x to the 1st. Anytime I'm dividing, I subtract their exponents. So that's going to be x to the 3rd. And if you think about that, x to the 4th, what that means is x times x times x times x. In the denominator, I have an x. So I'm able to cancel one out, and so I'm left with x to the 3rd. Okay? Now we're going to look at our y to the 3rd over y second. In that situation, when I subtract the 3 minus the 2, I'm left y to the 1st. And so this is my final answer right here. Okay.